Welcome to the Osborne Financial Group podcast, hosted by Jared Osborne. Join us for expert insights on wealth management strategies, essential tips for securing your financial future, and in-depth discussions on life and health insurance options. Get practical advice for protecting your assets and loved ones, proven strategies for maximizing investments, and real-life examples to illustrate key concepts. Stay tuned for Q&A sessions with industry professionals and actionable steps to take control of your finances and insurance needs. Tune in now and empower your financial journey.
Well, hello, everyone, and welcome back. If you were with us on our last episode, we were talking about the power of saving, compounding interest, starting early. And that got me thinking about kind of where I'm at in my life, right in the middle of life, 45 years old, and how priorities change and shift over time, and how people tend to make the same types of mistakes with money through the different seasons of their life. So I thought we'd go through some of the mistakes by decade, and how you could avoid them, and how you could start building, solid, sound financial planning for yourself and your family, starting early, wherever you're at right now. So, Jarrett, always a pleasure to see you, brother.
Good to see you. Thanks for doing this with me, and welcome everybody who's watching or will watch in the future.
So let's start with the 20s, right? I think one of the biggest things for young folks is, right, you get out of college or high school, whatever it is, you get a job, you start making some money, and you're like, oh, wow, I got money now. Like, let me buy this, let me buy that. And you start living above your means, and you really don't build the habits early that we talked about on the last episode about saving, right?
That's correct. And it probably goes back to something else we discussed. I don't know if it was last time or the time before, but not having that, learning financial basics in, high school or college or wherever, from your parents or whoever, or a mentor. And it leads to, bad habits a lot of times. You talk about not saving early on in your life. We talked about last podcast that, even a little bit, throwing a 10, 15, 20 bucks a week, if you can do more, great. That's, the first thing, starting early. We talked about that, compounding, discussed compounding and how important it is to start early. The earlier you start, obviously the more you'll have. But a lot of times that comes with, or it's because you don't have the knowledge from not learning early on, which, like I said, should be part of every curriculum, whether it be high school or college. And, in Florida, there is some sort of, I think DeSantis made some new law that every school has to have some sort of financial literacy class or sort of financial class. So that's, definitely not starting investing early, talking about, you mentioned it, getting yourself caught up with spending, getting yourself in too much debt. Once you start getting in debt and, you're young and you're not making the money probably that you will make later on in life, hopefully, trying to get out of that debt could be very, very challenging, to say the least. And credit card debt, especially when you're paying an interest on top of whatever you owe, which adds to it. So a lot of times, most people are just paying off their interest and not paying off the principal. And it becomes a never-ending kind of cycle where, like,
it could feel like you're stuck in the undertow, like you're being pulled away. Life is hard enough as it is, but when you're already in the hole and you have the interest from the debt sucking away from it, becomes seemingly impossible. Not nearly, but I think so many of us get caught in our own heads, especially when we're young. It's like, oh, well, I just don't have enough, right? I just need more. Like, I don't have enough. And that's where people go wrong. We talked about this last time. It's like, just start small. Like no matter where you're at, just start building the habits so that once you do reach your 30s and you're advanced in your career and you start making some more money, well, then you can get into some of the stuff that you need to be doing then, which is, I think people really, really delay starting with like retirement planning, because they're, when you're younger, I'm not going to retire for 20, 30 years. I'll deal with it.
Right. And also
thinking about very early on.
Correct. And also separate, everybody's so into instant gratification these days. another thing is being disciplined, which goes to, investing early, but also separating, and I know this sounds, you know, obvious, but separating needs from wants. There's certain things you're going to need, okay? Clothes, food, and then there's certain things that are wants, okay? And you have to kind of have a discipline of saying, okay, well, I got to put some money away. That want will have to hold off for a little bit. Obviously the needs, you can't do anything about. And that's another thing. And then, add the social media, oh my God, I have to have this and the best of this, and I have to have that piece of clothes. And so it's really, it's a lot more challenging, I think, for a young person today than it was back then, because we didn't have everything thrown in our face. We didn't have the social media. We didn't have, this, oh, I gotta have the best, and this or that. And so it's a discipline. And if you don't have that discipline, you will feel it later on in life, I promise you, because every day,
You
and
only kick the can down the road so far.
yeah, no, I mean, look, thank God I was able to save, but I dealt with that when in my 20s and in college, and getting into too much, credit card debt, and, spending too much money early on. I do this for a living, so I kind of learned pretty quick, hey, I better, change my habits. But if you don't have the knowledge, which goes back to probably not learning early on about financial literacy, or have any financial literacy, or understanding the basics of investing, and why you got to start early, especially in today's world where everything is a lot more expensive, and with
Oh, yes.
inflation, and just everything is more, you go try to rent in a city, if you're out of college, and you live in New York or a major city. I mean, it's unbelievable what things cost. And even if you equate for inflation over time, it was a lot cheaper, when you equate for inflation 10-15 years ago than it is now. So you
Yeah.
better learn how to save, because it's not getting any better.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's interesting what you were saying about needs versus wants, and I want to elaborate on that a little bit further. When it comes to the needs, just remember the needs, while they are needs like food and things like that, they are flexible and fungible in that, like, there's a difference between, well, I need to eat, so let me go out and spend $50-$60 on lunch at this restaurant, versus, oh, let me actually like go shopping and prepare and plan meals and like cook something healthy at home and save a bunch of money there. And I know it's
Correct.
difficult, right? I'm guilty of it too. It's, I got kids running around, and it happened last night. I defrosted some chicken, was ready to cook, and got away from me, and I ended up at Chick-fil-A.
Well, we talked about it last week too. Starbucks.
Yeah.
Look, I mean, I like my Starbucks as much as the next person. That's Starbucks is something, where we, if that's, you can say food is a need, you said that, but Starbucks is not a need. Coffee,
Depends on who
you
you
have to
ask.
have your coffee. You can make coffee at home. I mean, I do. I mean, I probably, and I, sometimes my wife and I laugh, because it's like, God, I mean, how much money can we save if we go to Starbucks every day?
Oh,
And
yeah.
it's literally
Crazy.
it came out to, we determined it was an IRA contribution every year.
Well, you and your wife are buying one drink. If you're spending $10 a day on average, even just during the working
100%.
days, that's like 25. Spending a few $100s a month on Starbucks.
Right, and you're right, and really, as a financial advisor, it's something I shouldn't be doing. But look, I don't, I sacrifice other things because I want to have my Starbucks in the morning. It's just something I do. It's more of a ritual to me, and I enjoy it. But there are a lot of young people who are going to Starbucks, spending $5, $6, $7 a day at Starbucks, and are in credit card debt.
Paying their rent month, like they
That's
don't
what I
have
mean. Yeah,
pay
and
the rent.
struggling.
Yeah, that's
So, you're right. Needs and wants, needs are flexible. Obviously, I mean, you say obviously, but it's really not obvious. For people, it's not obvious sometimes, because, there's certain ways. Sometimes you have to be a little bit stringent. You have to be a little frugal. It's okay, it's okay to pinch your pennies. Trust me, you'll be better off down the road, than and you'll be happy down the road that you've done all this stuff.
Yeah.
I'm talking from experience.
And it's becoming like you said about everything being so expensive now, it's becoming increasingly difficult from a mindset perspective to embody that idea of like pinching pennies. Because you'll go and like, I'm at Publix, I'm like, oh, let me buy this one, it's buy one get one free, or let me, this one's 50 cents cheaper than the other one. And then I go home and all of a sudden I get an expense that pops in for $600, $700, thousands, whatever it is. And you're like, I'm pinching pennies on one end, and the other end it's just
Right.
coming out a thousandfold. I was like, what am I even doing that for? What's the point? It's very easy to slip down that, but it's so important to not let that happen and be disciplined. And it's okay to spend, you're going to have expenses, and it's okay to go out to dinner and spend $100, $200 once in a while. So make it for like a special occasion. Don't make it the norm just because you're being lazy and don't want to cook.
And if you're going to do those things for special occasions, then, or you want to save up for something that's special, that's maybe not a need, but a want, then you another part of that discipline should be putting money aside to save for those things. It's okay to have a goal to save for something that you want to buy, really want to buy. Okay. I'm not saying put your savings on the back burner, but it's another part of your savings. If you want to buy a car, or you want, you want to buy something special for somebody, don't, forget about all the other things you have to do. You got to be disciplined and save for it, just like anything else.
Mm-hmm.
It's not rocket science, but there's a discipline to it, and that's it's very important.
Yeah. So we squandered money like foolish children in our 20s. We lived well beyond our means, but we kind of figured it out, right? In our mid-20s, we got a little bit of stability. We started making some money. We started saving a little bit. We made it into our 40s, and we actually have some assets now, right? We own a home. We have some money saved away. We have our IRA. We have all this stuff. I think a lot of people now, they ignore protecting those assets and then estate planning and things that happen in that season of life. So talk a little bit about what folks should do once that, it might not be in your 40s, maybe it's a little earlier, but generally.
Well, like 30s and 40s, obviously you're still, the 30s, hopefully, 30s and 40s, you should be at that, not everybody, but for the most part, you've probably been working 5, 6, depending on your, occupation or how long you've been in school. You've probably been working 5, 6, 7, 8 years. You've probably started making, more money, obviously, than we were in your early 20s. Very important to continue, obviously, the savings. If you're at a job, or where you're at a company, 401ks. Making another thing is, and this stage of your life is making sure, whether you're married or not married, or if you're married, even more important, is making sure you have the adequate insurance that you should be buying, whether it's health insurance, which, if anybody has health insurance, they know the cost. It's very expensive these days. Making sure, if you're married, you have the adequate, a life insurance policy. You don't have to get crazy. A term policy, we've talked about it in the past. If you own a home, making sure you have adequate homeowners insurance, auto insurance. A lot of the insurances I don't offer, but this stage of your life, you're going to be spending, and as you get older, even more, anywhere from 10 to 20% of your income is going to be going to insurance costs, maybe more. Okay. Depending on, how you get that insurance. If you work for a company, maybe they pay, but health insurance, life insurance, if you're married, homeowners insurance, auto insurance, umbrella policies, which are, a form of protecting your assets. So very important. This is a stage of your life where you're hopefully making making pretty good money, making more money than you were in your 20s. You're putting money away for your retirement, whether it be 401ks or IRAs. You're making sure that, another thing is, you have an adequate emergency fund. This goes for 30s, 40s, 50s, and then 6 to 12 months of an emergency fund. Okay. What that is just, you take your kind of your monthly expenses, your musts, and you take that number and you multiply it by 6 or 12. Some people want to have 12 months, at least have 6 to 8 months. That's important, and that's money that you just, maybe keep in a money market. God forbid, you
Accessible.
talked about having, hey, I spend money on this, but then I needed a new air conditioning in my house, or, a medical bill came up and, I have a $3,000 deductible and now I have to pay $3,000. So, these are the things that, come up, every so often. Seems like more often as you get a family and, these things come up more, that you have these unexpected expenses, and to have an emergency fund so you don't have to tap into your savings, so you don't have to. Yeah, I mean, it's
for your like just peace of mind,
yes,
because unexpected things are going to come up, and there's a what you just said is so huge, and this is something that I struggle with as well. It's like there's a big difference between having, like, you can have the money, but if you have to go into one of your vehicles, one of your retirement funds, one of your things that you built to access it, that's a lot more detrimental to your mental well-being of the situation than if you have the reserve funds just there for that. There's a big
100%. Yep, and it's something that you should be just kind of, do in conjunction with your savings. Hey, you have a little bit of a side fund, where you're putting money into every so often. Look, sometimes everybody, we get lucky and we get a nice, thing from work or an inheritance, and we get a chunk of change, and that helps. But really, part of your savings, a little bit should be thrown into an emergency fund. It's very important. Yes, it's because you, like you said, you don't want to have to tap into your retirement account. You don't want to have to tap into
it
your
feels bad. You're like,
yeah.
oh, I don't, and so there's resistance. You're like, do I have to do that? Where else can I get the money from? It just creates an unnecessary layer of confusion around the issue.
Or you don't want to have to go on a credit card.
Or
And having, that's what a lot of people do, and that's how, medical bills, and hey, I don't have money set aside to pay. I have to go on a credit card, and that creates this never-ending cycle of trying to get out of this debt. And uh, you're not, it doesn't allow you to save for retirement. You put that on hold, and after 5 years, you're like, oh my God, I've just haven't put money on any side. And I've been trying to pay off this debt, and it's it's also very stressful, and it's not good for your health. Because it's always over your head, and you're just dealing with it all the time, and it's like you're swimming upstream. You just it's hard to get out of, and I've been there. When I was young, and it sucked. And it's stressful, and it create and stress is not good for your health. It creates, you get in a bad mood, you become miserable, and so yeah,
no bueno.
I know it's easier said than done, but like I said, it comes back to discipline. It comes back to discipline, and everybody,
Comes back
yeah,
to discipline. Yeah. So as you know, I'm 45. I'm approaching the big 50.
yeah.
I got two kids, 13 and 11. So I'm right around 50 is when they're going to be going to college. I think that's something that a lot of folks don't take into account, which is college expenses and then their own retirement costs, right? Because it's one thing to start thinking about saving for retirement and putting money away. It's another thing altogether to actually like make projections and look at your lifestyle and look at and like outline how you want to be living and like bridge that gap between where you're at now and what you need to do to get there. I think a lot of people probably leave that out of the equation until until it's not too late, but until it's late,
Yeah, I mean, look, in your 40s and 50s, this is where, again, you probably at this stage of your life, you've hopefully gotten to your career, you're established, you're making the money that you're probably making. Obviously you can still grow, but you put in the time. You have to. We talked about you setting up plan one. If at this stage you're probably married, have kids, setting up wills and trusts. At 40 and 50, not so much 40, but I would say closer to 50, you should restart. And 50, between 50, 45 and 55, you should be. And I hate to say it, this is not just because I'm in the insurance business, but it's kind of a necessary evil to start looking at things like long-term care insurance. These are things where protects you, it's retirement savings. It's an asset protection vehicle these days. Making sure you have adequate wills and trusts, making sure that your life insurance policies, you have kids now probably at this point. You talked about saving for college, very important. At the same time, you don't want to put your retirement savings they always say, rule one, one of the rules in investing is pay yourself before you start paying, saving for your kids. Save for yourself before you start saving. And the reason for that is because, look, when your kids go to college, there could be other avenues, scholarships. I mean, they may have to take out loans and stuff like that. I'm not saying don't put money away for college, but be selfish and save for retirement before you start saving for your kids. Or if you can do both, that's great. I do. Okay. But I'm making sure that I'm maxing out all my retirement goals because it's possible. And I can do that before I really start, putting money aside for my kids. I do both. I can do that, thank God. But I would say don't sacrifice your own retirement savings to save for your kids for college. You got to be selfish when you're talking about retirement plan. It's very expensive.
Pesky kids, they can take care of
Yeah,
themselves.
no, the kids, you'll deal with it. They can get loans, they can get hopefully scholarships, they can do there's you can do a prepay, if you live in Florida. I'm sure there's in other states they have other things they do, I know. But don't start,
just get good grades and you'll get in Florida, you get a Bright Future scholarship. You go to any school in Florida, if you get good enough grades, it's almost a free ride, or at least it was.
Correct. So, that's a lot of people think, oh, I got to put money away for kids' college and I'm going to sacrifice my own retirement. No, that's not the way to do it. You want to put money away for yourself first and then for the kids. Okay. That's another thing. But yeah, I mean, this is the stage of your life. You're getting to that. And I'm in the same boat. I'm a little older. We're middle-aged, and so we should have our wills and trusts, set up. Some people do it themselves on these legal Zoom or whatever. Some people hire an attorney because it's a little bit more complex of an issue. Making sure that you're looking at all your insurances. I'll put my insurance agent on, your long-term care, making sure your health insurance is adequate, if you can afford it these days. Making sure that you have adequate life insurance for your family if God forbid something happens. And that can be done through term insurance. It's very cheap. So those are the things that you should be doing. And obviously trying to sock as much money away for retirement, because this stage of your life, you probably only have another 10, 15, 20, maybe 20 years to put money away. If you've underfunded in the early years, which most people do, you got to make it up. It's just time to kind of hopefully you can make it up. And if you're a homeowner, that's another ball. They have to work, make sure you have the right homeowners insurance, making sure that your home is, up to date with all your things and flood insurance, things like that. So this is really where probably you're going to start spending. Your kids are getting older. They may start driving. They have,
Oh goodness.
These are and also
don't remind me, Jared.
Yeah, I'm in the same. I'm a 13 and 17-year-old. So, I'm dealing with college and my daughter has a car and that insurance, and my insurance doubled. I don't deal with auto insurance, but I don't care how much money you make when your auto insurance go from 3,000 or 4,000 to 8,000. It's a lot, on top of all the other things. And she wants to go out of state for college, of course. So these are the things that you whether you have planned for it, hopefully you have, and that's why we've talked about the different stages of your life. These are the things that you should have been planning for in your 20s and 30s, or 30s and 40s, and then as you hit late 40s and 50s, and then this is where, if you haven't done all of that, you better start making that stuff up if you can. This time to catch up. But this is like anything else, this goes back to the earlier you start, the better. Okay, the earlier you start, the better. And it doesn't have to be a lot. It can be a little. You get that discipline. You understand. Oh wow, I'm putting money away and it's starting to grow. 5, 10 years. Wow, I can't. And and then you start learning. Through experience. Wow, this does work. This does work. And look, at certain stages, you may be that knowledgeable about investing or insurance, you could do it on your own. But if not, it's time, you can hire people like myself or somebody that that can do these things for you, whether it be insurance or a financial advisor, or to help you along the way, to help you make these goals, to establish these goals and put money aside. And you talked about a financial plan. Those are the things that, budgeting, financial planning, putting together a financial plan if possible, Doesn't have to be a complex financial plan, but there should be some sort of goal and path because it's very important to have goals. So whether you achieve them or not, and hopefully you do, you have a goal, so you're striving for something,
Right. Certainly not going to achieve it if you don't know what it is.
Right. And they can be lofty goals, and that's the way they should be.
Yeah.
And maybe you don't achieve it, but at least you're going through that path. And that's very important too.
Absolutely. So as we approach the retirement years, right? What's the standard retirement age is 65, I guess, is like commonplace. Do you see a lot of folks that start withdrawing Social Security too early without a long-term plan?
So yes and no. There's a lot of different, I don't know, arguments, but different ideas of when people should start taking Social Security. Some people say, defer it to your 70 because you get an increase after 65 or 66 whenever you're, start taking your Social Security. There, if you wait till 70, you get an increase of an 8% every single year until the age of 70, which increases the amount that you get. Okay, but here's the rule of thumb: if you were to defer your Social Security, from 65 to 70, yeah, you're going to get that 8% annual simple increase every single year on that. So you'll get more at age 70 than you will at 65. The break-even point is about 7 to 8 years, meaning that if you were to defer your Social Security till 70, it'll take you till about around 78 years old to recoup the amount that you could have gotten if you started at 65. So if meaning that if you waited 5 years to take your Social Security, all that money, even though it was less than what you can get at age 70, a lot of people say, I'd rather have more at 70. Well, one, what if you don't live that long? Big factor is health. I always talk about, are you a healthy person at age 65? Because they ask me, should I take Social Security? Are you healthy? Very healthy. I'm like, okay, well, that's one variable. If you're not, if someone's like, no, I'm really not that healthy, I have heart issues, take your Social Security as early as possible, because you're probably, I hate to say it, not going to live to 78. If you defer your Social Security till 70, and it takes about 8 years to recoup the amount that you would have gotten between 65 and 70, even though it was less money. It's about 8 years to break even. So if you're not a healthy person, take it as early as you can, 65.
Makes sense.
If you're healthy, it's still an argument, okay? Because you can say, well, you know what? I may not need that money at 65, but I could be taking, yes, it'll be less than if I wait till 66, 67, 68, or 70, but I could be taking that money that I don't need and investing it, and maybe getting conservatively 4, 5, 6, 7, whatever you can get on your money. Hopefully it grows. And that's another factor to consider, the opportunity cost of not taking that money at 65 as opposed to age 70, of putting that money as, if you don't need it, putting that money in an investment, even if it's a bond at 4 or 5%. That's the other thing. And lastly, what I would say is, you have to also consider, when you start taking Social Security, especially for high net worth individuals, will taking Social Security put you into a different tax bracket? So maybe you're at that close stage where like an additional 30 or 40 grand a year will bump you up into another tax bracket. It also has an effect on your Medicare. There's something called IRMA, which is a surcharge by the government based on your income. So right now, Medicare, without getting too much in the weeds, you pay a premium for Medicare. It's a Part B premium. Standard, it's about $170. But as you start, if you make money, if you're a high income person, or if you're in a certain, and there's different income brackets, you can be charged more than that 170 premium every month, because your income is at a certain level. And if that Social Security, this is something you got to discuss with your financial advisor or even your accountant. If taking Social Security will bump you into another tax, and not tax bracket, or an income bracket where it could affect your IRMA, you could be paying more for Medicare as well. So those are the type of things you got to start thinking about. take Social Security at 65? Should you take it at 70? Should you take it somewhere in between? It's you have to sit down because there's a lot of variables to it. It's more than just, hey, do I need the money? Obviously, if you need the money, you take it. 2, if I don't need the money, can I invest that money and do better, than waiting? Okay. 3, am I healthy? There's my life expectancy with a bad heart going to be 78, 79, where if I wait and defer the Social Security till age 70, will I live, is my life expectancy based on my health now 78, which is that break even point. So, there's a lot of different arguments for it, but it's something that I would sit down with somebody who understands the different factors that go into, that decision. It's more than just, hey, I want to take it now. And, there's a lot of variables to it.
So many moving parts. And that's why it's so, even if you're somebody that has this stuff under control, maybe you're good with finances yourself, I'd still say, you got to find a wealth manager, advisor, somebody that because seeing things from a different perspective, like you're looking at everything through your own lens and through your perspective. So you might be well equipped to manage your own money and deal with those stuff, but you have tunnel vision many times. There could be things on the periphery that you're not seeing. So it's important to have an outside party consult with you and give you advice there. So important.
100%. And another thing is all these, things about the rules, laws about Social Security, Medicare, all these things, they change all the time. They're fluid, so tax laws. I mean, how many times, we just had a new bill pass recently that in 2026 is going to affect, hopefully for the better, child credits, things of that nature. So all these things are changing all the time. They're fluid. And so that's another kind of, thing to consider when making these decisions.
100%.
And it's hard to keep up. It's hard to keep up. I mean, even if you do it for a living, it's hard to. If you don't do it for a living, like you said, it gets a little. When we talk about health insurance, it's like it's Chinese to most people.
I've had conversations like this countless times, and when it comes to health insurance, it's just that my brain just fogs up. It's like can't get it
because it's not. I mean, it's like anything else. If an engineer started talking to you about his work in an engineer, I'd be like, what are you talking about? I mean, this is what I do. So to me, it's common knowledge, but I understand. I mean, I talk to people about insurance, health insurance, even finance all the time. They're like looking right through me. It's like this blank stare. I'm like, and I try to look, just tell me to slow down. I'm trying to, I want you to understand this, but like you said, you understand it when you're there. And then, 2 weeks later, you're like, well, life goes on and, you got 10 other things going on. You're like, I forgot what's going on. I understand. I get it. It's very confusing.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's leave it at that. I think that was very, very informative. Everyone, thanks so much for tuning in. If you found this content useful, don't forget to like, subscribe, all that fun stuff. Let us know what your biggest takeaway was in the comments. We always love to hear your feedback. So until next time, everybody take care. Have a wonderful day. And just enjoy your life. Live your life to the fullest. We only have this one go at it. Or at least
that's true. But be disciplined. Discipline.
Discipline, but enjoy yourself, right?
Yeah,
it's all about balance, my friends. Always
100% balance, and just enjoy life. And you can have all the money in the world, but if you're not healthy, it doesn't matter.
What good is it? Yep, 100%. All right, everyone, take care. Have a great day.
Thank you, Jeremy. Thank you, everybody.
Bye.
Thanks for tuning in to the Osborne Financial Group podcast. For more financial tips and personal advice, visit us at www.osbornefinancial.com. That's www.osbornefinancial.com. Or give us a call at 954-963-3300. Take charge of your financial future today.